Hello, welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy podcast. My name is Jed, and we are reading the Phaedo. Last time we came to an interesting conclusion. Socrates really laying out the conditions and the nature of our greatest problem as human beings. We've been talking about how philosophy is the archetype of the hero's journey, of course, but here he's saying, well, yeah, if there's a hero's journey, there's a villain's journey. And we know that we're operating on two levels. We're using the everyday world as a metaphor, as a kind of mythology to explain our spiritual development. So while Socrates is identifying our greatest problem. What is our greatest problem? And of course, he uses analogy to show, well, this creates the greatest villains. What's our greatest problem? Well, a hatred of the logos. Hatred and reviling of the logos. That's our greatest problem. This is the worst thing that can happen to us as human beings. To hate the logos or revile the logos. He also mentioned earlier in the text that if you're not a philosopher, you'll end up being a lover of the body, which will manifest as a lover of wealth, riches, or a lover of honor, or some combination of the two. And the implications of that is you will, let's bring it up in the text actually. You will despise the logos. Let's bring it up in the text. Lover of the body would have as the implication of loving the body, well, we saw that it's the cause of all of our problems, our ills, our ignorance, our civil discord, our wars. But there was a section here where he said we will hate and fear and avoid that which is tangible and intelligible to philosophy. So here he's already mentioned that the implication of being associated with our body in our lifetime, accompanying or training our soul, nurturing the soul in that way, nailing the soul to the body, thinking that only things you can see, touch, drink, eat, and use for sexual purposes are real, most real and clear. The implications of that is you will become accustomed to hate that which is formless to the eyes, but is knowable through philosophy. He's talking about the realm of being, of course. So here on 81b, page 42, Socrates has already pointed out, well, the implications of this regular, non-philosophical, non-lover of wisdom way of living is you will train yourself to hate and fear and avoid that which is intelligible. Seized by the grip of the corporeal, he calls it. Now, that's the intelligible. So this is the implications of side B of our dialectic. What if philosophy doesn't exist? What if we are just in our bodies? And that's it. And there's no other realm other than the physical realm. That's what's most clear and real. But here at 90D, many pages later, he says, by the way, the greatest problem is, see, what did he call it? He called it the greatest problem. the sick condition, there's no greater defect than one can suffer than to hate the logos. Hatred of the logos and hatred of human beings arise out of the same condition. So what started with the implications of hating the intelligible, that which is knowing, Socrates says, well, the greatest problem is hating the logos. Why is that the greatest problem? Why isn't the greatest problem hating the intelligible? Well, they're tied together, aren't they? All the way through, we've been seeing the logos is our method. It's our yoga. It's the process. It's what makes it this complete spiritual tradition. The logos is what, and we're saying, hey, by the way, if the logos is the ladder up for our evolution and our personal development, the logos' shadow is the cause of our problems, then understanding the logos is what we need to solve problems and reach our excellence. So we could say healing is going from sickness to health, and perfecting is going from health to excellence. If you've got a broken arm, you might go to a doctor that will heal the broken arm, but then you go to a personal trainer to get the excellence of your physical form. So too for the soul. So, if that's the case, then the ultimate hero in the ultimate hero story would be the hero who saves the logos. Rather than a movie where you address a particular problem, this manifestation of tyranny, this manifestation of capitalism, this manifestation of inequality, that's usually the cause of crime, this criminal getting beaten up by Batman. Instead of addressing the particulars, addressing the cause. The reason we have these problems is that we have not yet awoken the logos in our society. And those who have are few. Socrates points out that we need the art of the logo so we can judge people where they're at relative to the ladder and where they're stuck relative to its shadow. And the extremes are rare. People like Wembanyama, very, very, very tall, are rare. 1 in a billion or something like that. People who are very, very tiny, rare. People are usually in the middle somewhere. So you can say there's like a right angle made by the ladder and its shadow, and that the angle to which you're at, you can plot yourself on a point relative to where you're at and where you're stuck. And so actually we could even draw that out and have the ladder up. That's my pen, here we go. The logos, oops, make it more straight. The logos up. And its shadow, we can call it now, we've got 2 words now. We've got the pathologos. And we've also got the anti-logos, because the people who create the conditions for the pathologos, if spent their time contradicting the logos. So we can call that the anti-logos. We've got 2 terms here. So if this is a right angle here, you could be here in terms of your development, but stuck here. So you could say you're here on this graph, somewhere between here and here. Somewhere between the logos up and its shadow, you could point yourself on a graph. We've talked about there are certain kind of spiritual gurus or mystics who have reached a high level up the logos. And logos has 2 parts, of course, understanding and knowledge, or understanding and states of mind. So you can add that into your idea of the logos. Maybe you've had a high experience, but your understanding is low. So you could have 2 parts to that ladder, maybe. But they have huge problems. The pervy sage or the drunken master, these archetypes, of course. So You could be here up high and also have a big problem. So therefore you could plot yourself here. So you could plot yourself anywhere here. And Socrates says, by the way, this is the kind of judgment you have to make with the art of the logos. If you don't, it will cause problems. Not just any problems, but the greatest problem. So, if the logos is what we need to solve our problems, escape from fate, reach our destiny, purification and perfection, therefore, then the greatest hero will be that which saves the logos. And of course, the hero is the mythology of our souls, our individual task. We don't need the world to come along with us for us to reach our own personal spiritual goals. Maybe we're on the last reincarnation that we're on before our upgrade, whereas the people around us are on, they're halfway along their journey. That's the thing about philosophy. Your level of development is not restricted by whatever level the person next to you is at, or however much they want to participate. So that's the idea of mythology. So the greatest hero mythologizes the greatest hero we can be to ourselves. Can we save the logos? Maybe at some time we were faced with what Socrates is laying out as the conditions for us to hate the logos. And that's mythologized as the conditions to hate humans. Because, here we go, hatred of humans is put on out of an excessive trust without the use of art. So you believe someone is truthful and trustworthy, but they find out they're base and untrustworthy. And if this experience happens to them many, many times, and they have this feeling, that feeling of being let down or betrayed or abused or taken advantage of, or suffering some injustice from people who you thought you could trust over and over again, you might be led to believe after all of these blows that they should hate everyone. There is no sound state of mind. There is no health, or not just health, but excellence in the human. There is no healthy or excellent state of mind. There is no justice. So, of course, we can recognize these taken to the extreme or mythologized in story as the origin story of the villain. But also, that represents ourselves. Maybe we have been let down. All of us have suffered an injustice. All of us have that anger or doubt to some level, because that's part of the human condition. We get a problem from childhood. Someone who we thought was trustworthy had the appearance of being beauty, justice, goodness. We trusted, and then later we found out that it was wrong. And so what do we want to do with our anger? What do we want to do with the cause of our problems? Socrates is saying, hey, by the way, the cause wasn't just their untruthfulness. That's a part of it. The cause really was you didn't have the art of the logos yet. Of course, we don't expect children to have the art of the logos, but still, knowing the cause, because this is not a blame game, understanding the cause. Understanding the cause allows us to address the cause. Therefore, if this was the cause of our hatred or anger towards human beings, this lack of the use of the art, then we would follow that, well, maybe we should learn the art. Go back to where we left off and address the issue. Put it to bed. Address it fairly with the use of the art of the logos. Equally too, this is a mythology, keep in mind, so we have to turn inward to ourselves, to our soul. Can we recognize our own anger or hatred of human beings, or anger or hatred of the logos, because this is what it's representing, something that turns us off doing philosophy, that turns us off reading in this way, turns us off doing the dialectic. There's no point to it. There's nothing good in the logos. You can't reason your way to enlightenment. Look at how irrational human beings are. Surely if there was a rational, a sound, a perfect wholeness or sanity, if there was a person like this, they would have existed before and they would be in charge. The fact that all of our leaders are ignorant or suffering, playing out their anger towards human beings, their tyranny and injustice, that would mean that there is no understanding. This is a world of irrationality and injustice. What level of that do you have? Of course, this is why we have the graph. Because, hey, you might only have that play out a little bit in your life. But those who have a lot of power, psychic power of some kind, may have that problem played out to a higher degree. So we can use this graph here to judge people and judge what would happen if somebody reaches this level of development or power while not addressing their problem. Maybe it will allow them to play out their problem here with a greater significance. I don't know, play with that pattern, that image, that graph. So whatever level we have a distrust in the logos, we need to address. And Socrates is saying it's the worst problem. A sick condition, no greater defect. So previously, the implications of not being a philosopher, and of course, to become a philosopher, he's already showed us. You start with a lover of learning. The three parts of the soul: lover of desires, lover of riches, lover of honors, or lover of understanding. The three parts of our soul: inward desire, outward moving, and reasoning. Which of those do you want to focus on? Those who love the highest part of their soul, smallest but highest, smallest in power, well, smallest in influence usually when you're in the physical body. The reasoning become a lover of learning. And then a lover of learning realizes that what they are learning about is being. So they become a lover of wisdom when they apply their logos to being. But you can't do either of those if you distrust the logos or hate the logos or don't believe there is such a thing as the logos. So you can't even become a philosopher. So if it's our way to reach being, maybe that's why, this is a question of course, why is Socrates saying the distrust or the fear and hatred, or the hatred and the hatred and the despising, let's get it accurate, the reviling and hating of the logos down here, and to believe that there is no truth and firmness of the logos. That is capable to be understood. There is no understanding. Why is that the greatest problem? Well, if understanding the logos is our way to reach being, then I guess that would be a greater problem. If you hate being, if you hate that which is intelligible only to philosophy because you're a lover of the physical senses, but you love learning, maybe you can address that hatred, you can address that fear, because that's what the logos does. But if you hate logos, you can't even address that fear or hatred of being. So the logos is the greatest problem. The fear or hatred, the despising, or the thinking that there is no art, no rules. Where was the word rules? Yes. There is no soundness or stability in the realities nor the logos. So there's no soundness or stability in. So it's kind of both, isn't it? Because the reality is being. There is no existence or goodness or soundness or stability. You can't nail it down. You can't understand it. You can't reach there. There's no end to the reality or the logos. So Socrates is laying out, hey, this is the greatest problem. If this is going to be the greatest hero story, not only do I have to rescue these people from the fear or the doubt of the logos, the distrust, by vanquishing the logos of Simmias and Cebes that says that our soul doesn't last after our death, but I have to really outline why that is going to be the greatest thing to do. Because not only is it a distrust, if you keep having these blows, you say, hey, this lack of trust, because they trusted the logos before that showed that the soul was immortal. Now Simmias and Cebes brought in this logos that needs to be vanquished. That got us to doubt the logos. But if you keep having this experience where you trust something and then you hear another thing and you don't know whether that has to be trusted, so you go back and forth, at one time false and at the other time not being so, he also says true and false. So at one times the logo sounds true and sometimes it sounds false, the same logos. So this thing, this blow that they're having, if you have a series of these blows, it causes the greatest condition. It causes the archetype of the villain. And it causes the worst condition within our souls. So again, hero-villain is the mythology. That's the playing out in society or in our stories about society. But we're most interested as philosophers in ourselves. In our lifetime, our development, why we're here, our destiny. Help ourselves first. And of course, there's a flow-on effect. The greater you shine your light, the greater you'll be a natural help to others. And Socrates already pointed this out. All physical things seek being and remind us to seek being ourselves. We all start in our physical senses before as it says in the text, before philosophy takes hold of us. Therefore, you have to start by seeing two equal sticks and then ask the question of equality. It is only through our physical senses first that we can awaken ourselves to the logos. So, hey, the greater the sticks are, the greater the... So let's just recap quickly. Because in the text itself, he says, I'm going to explain the doctrine of philosophy and mythologize it. So in the mythology, he's saying, hey, when you the hatred of humans arise out of the same problem. So that's the mythology. Hating humans. The villain who wants to blow up the world or something plays out his anger towards humanity. But that represents ourselves within our soul. It's a mythology. It's a analogy. Same condition. The hatred of the logos. What's the logos? The universal pattern of understandability that unfolds in everything. The journey back, that which we apply our understanding to solve our problems and climb the ladder to being. And by the way, just to finish our previous thought, Socrates pointed out that all physical things seek being and also have a purpose to remind us to begin this quest of learning. You see two equal sticks and you think, what is equal itself? You see beautiful things and then hopefully you're led to ask, if you're interested in learning, what is beauty itself? Because it can't be in that person. because it's also over here. Or it looked like that person was beautiful, but when they got closer, they were ugly. Like a Monet painting. So what did I see that was beautiful? Where did I learn beauty? What am I actually remembering here? So this idea that all learning is remembering is what we can come to realize through first addressing our physical senses. So the idea of helping yourself helps others comes to light, because the greater we can reach our goal of reaching being, the greater we will be at helping others recognize they are here too to find being. So the greater you shine the light, the greater you can be a light to others, a guiding light to others. We talked about how therefore we have to get rid of the language of competition, selfish and selfless. To reach your highest goal is bad. This is slave language that we have. Oh, okay. The greater we shine our light, the greater we become a beacon for others. So selfish, of course, is being that light, and we say, oh, it's selfless to and good to not have your goals. Of course, that falls down. Oh, restored. Cool. Thank you very much for that in the chat. So, these people that Socrates is explaining that the soul is immortal too. Then they got the logos of Simius and Cebes to say, oh, kind of, maybe the soul is like a byproduct of our physical being. So it's like a harmony. The harmony doesn't actually exist. You have to use the physical guitar or the lyre, which is up in here. And then that's where harmony comes from. But it's the first thing to go. So maybe our soul doesn't have an existence. It's a byproduct of our physical being. And that's a common belief even today. Cebes comes on and said, I got another problem. What about this? What if our body is like a coat? Our soul has a kind of existence, and we have different, our body changes as we live. So we wear many different clothes. We are in many different physical forms, but eventually our body will outlive us. You will be buried in a coat. The last coat that you wear will outlive your soul. Even if there's incarnation, hey, maybe our incarnations wear our souls down, so we don't know if this is our last incarnation and our soul is destroyed at the end of this life. So the last coat idea. So, and that felt familiar. It was familiar to these people, and therefore they felt like they've been left down. They should have trusted. They were led to believe that the Logos was truthful and sound and trustworthy, and now they feel betrayed. And after many of these blows, you end up hating the Logos. So what we're just seeing as a one instance, Socrates is pointing out not only am I saving their distrust of the Logos, I'm helping in the sense that if they keep having this feeling of distrust, they become a villain. Just like in the villain story, if you keep being let down by people you thought were trustworthy, especially people who you were led to believe should be your nearest and dearest friends, in the end, after many blows, you hate everyone and believe that there is no perfect sanity that exists in humanity. So you become the archetypal villain. So too with us and the Logos. So this is the significance of our distrust in the Logos. So not only, Socrates is saying, not only do I have to vanquish the Logos of Simius and Cebes, I need to leave you and humanity. With some method so that you don't allow yourself to suffer this blow over and over again. So again, particulars to the universal, from the many to the one, from the expression or the adjectives to the cause. So when I save you from this Logos, learn what it is that I did so you can save yourself, so you can have, and what is he calling it? The art of the Logos. The art of the logos. It actually says the art of the logos somewhere as well. The lack of art. The rules of the art. Yes, the logos that has the rules of the art. The art of the logos. Here we go. Art of the logos is written at 90b. So, don't just be convinced. Learn the art. Because maybe someone like Simius and Sebius can come along and convince you, oh, actually, here's a really persuasive argument. Hey, maybe the next, red pill YouTuber or the next YouTube debater comes across and was very convincing. Convince you that there is no soul, there is no being, there is no understandability to reality, there is no logos, there is no way of solving problems. Many psychologists claim this. There's no way of solving problems, it's just a matter of coping, getting by. Because then you'll suffer the same problem. You'll trust them. Oh, you know what? I trusted the logos, I trusted philosophy, I trusted the Phaedo, I trusted Socrates, and now this guy convinced me otherwise. So he's saying, to be the greatest hero, not only do I have to slay the villain, I have to slay the conditions for villainy. I have to teach you the art of the logos. Because he said, you know what? The problem, the reason why you didn't suffered these blows and end up hating people and becoming a villain in the story, and likewise for us, is you didn't use your art when you judged the person. Everyone is somewhere on that graph between the logos and its shadow. So now Socrates is like leveling up the game. He's given us his doctrine of philosophy. It's the art and practice of death and dying. He gave us the idea that, we purify ourselves. Should we have some quotes? We should have some quotes about this already. Here we go. Self-justice, beauty, the good, the ousia of all the selves and being is contemplated not through the body, but whosoever prepares themselves by dianoia. Each of the selves investigated. That's how you approach the nous, or the intuitive knowledge, or the experience of being. So he outlined that. He gave us the implications. If you don't do this, you become a lover of the body. This is the cause of all of our problems, the war, civil discord, and so forth. Not only for inhumanity, but for your soul. There is a significance. There is like a greater justice to the world. If you spend your lifetime seeking riches or fame, you're nailing the soul to the body. And that's going to affect your incarnation. You can come back, he said, if you depending on how you nurture your soul, you could come back as a donkey or a wolf or a hawk or a human. And this is the stakes, I think. I think if we don't do what we are here to do, then we might come back and have to forget again and may suffer a greater problem. So we don't want to forget. We don't want to. And he said, by the way, don't give up. Don't do philosophy for a while and let the desire for pleasure take over. Because self-imprisonment is the worst kind of imprisonment, or is the aid to our imprisonment. So he gave us that doctrine, and CBs came in and said, well, hang on a second, that would mean that the soul is immortal. Can you prove that? And he did. He walked him through the logos. CB said, oh, actually, I can help. I can give another reason why our soul must be immortal. I've been around you long enough to recognize, well, learning is remembering that logos. Simius came in and said, I'm not familiar with that. Can you lay that out? He could explain it, but he couldn't walk him through it. So now that we have the idea of art of the logos, maybe the art of the logos is to be able to also walk someone through it, benefit them. Because in art, we've been talking about benefits. The art of the medicine benefits the patient. So then we got the argument for learning as remembering. But then CB said, well, hang on a second. I'm kind of with you on there has to be a existence before we were born for us to, have a memory of being that we remember. But what about after we die? He goes, I kind of have a childhood fear of death. Can you help sing me the song that can slay that fear of death, like a child's fear of the boogeyman? And he gave him some reasoning. Simius, and they were kind of happy with it. And they kind of wanted to leave it sit. And then Socrates said, come on. Right, so, and again, covered the same idea that those who love learning do so for the sake of the beings, because what we really seek is to be in communion with the divine company of the pure and uniform, that which is beholding and always communing with that which is not an object of opinion, unopinable, and we want to escape from our problems. And so he outlined that, but then he said, by the way, I feel like you might have some objections to this. And they're like, oh, no, I don't want to bother you. It's your last day, so yada, yada. And Socrates says, bother? It's no bother. It's the opposite, in fact. It's like a swan singing the most beautiful song right before he dies. So what is his swan song? Of course, we have that expression. The swan song, your final and greatest masterpiece you do before you retire is your swan song. So Socrates is giving us his swan song, and he's saying, look, you need to understand why this is so great. Because you have a doubt of the logos. Which is, and I'm going to address that in particular, but also I'm going to address the universal. Because if you keep having this doubt, if you're convinced and then you get pushed off by convincing sounding people, especially if they sound like the sort of things you grow up with. Because they say, that idea of the soul is kind of like harmony. Emergentism, I think it's called. It's kind of a byproduct of a physical body. That kind of feels like what I'm used to hearing, so I'm kind of convinced. That's how scammers do it. We've been talking about that. Scammers play to what's familiar. So they use language like, hey, family, values, or make America great again. Of course, whenever a reporter says, oh, when was America great? There is no time. It's nonsense. Right, when slavery? When women had no rights? When? When was America? There is no time. They're using general language so you can fill in what's familiar to you, what's safe and familiar. And this is the significance to our problems. In order to grow, we have to leave what's safe and familiar and comfortable and be open to new insight. And that can be scary. Especially if part of being a human is to train you to be afraid of what's outside of the cave, which is part of our evolution. There are saber-toothed tigers out there in the dark. To stay safe in the cave. We have to overcome this and reach our next stage of development, because we can't stay feeling like our prejudices and hatred and old hatreds and divisions are safe and secure. Yeah, you know what it's like to wear that mask, but it's a bad mask. Or rather, it was a solution to a problem that no longer applies. Socrates is saying, so this is the stakes. My swan song is going to be important. I'm letting you know this. Not only am I solving this doubt, I'm showing you that this doubt causes the villains and will cause the greatest, so that's in society, but within your soul, will cause the greatest problem that you can have. Where's the word? No greater defect. All right, so we have our quotes here. Our new quotes to take with us for the journey. This first one. For there is no greater defect that one can suffer than to hate logos. But hatred of logos and hatred of humans arise out of the same condition, excessive trust in someone without the use of art. We can add to that this one. But that sick conditions happens whenever anyone puts their trust in some logos as being true without the use of the art of the logos. Now that's pretty much the same thing. So maybe we can make it one quote. So, if this is the greatest hero's story and Socrates' swan song is the archetype of what it means to be a true spiritual hero, he's saying this is the cause of villainy and it's the cause of the greatest defect within the soul. Both levels, the greater the soul and the lesser, the everyday. It's not just defeating one villain, but all villainy. Okay, and he's saying, and then what's it going to come down to? Art. The art of the logos. And by the way, the people who take the place and become these villains, they believe they're most wise because they are the ones who have thoroughly understood that there is no soundness and stability in reality. So the people who take the place are people who claim there is no reality. The atheists who say, oh, there is no divine realm. Or the materialists who say, oh, you can't know being. Or even the modern philosophers, the academic guys, not all of them, of course, but some of them say, oh, you can't know. Agnostic. In the greater sense, there is no ability to know. There is no reality. And there's no understandability. It's all opinion. So that's why we teach Kant's opinion and Hegel's opinion and all these different opinions. Because there's no logos. And there's no rules or skill. In other words, there's no paradigm. This is the essence of the irrationality behind the way philosophy is understood nowadays. If you were to learn anything, you'd learn the paradigm first. So why do we learn Hegel and Kant and all these opinions without first learning the paradigm? It's like becoming a doctor, first learning about all these illnesses without knowing what a healthy body looks like. It's insane. So these are the consequences of not having the art of the logos. And of course, and he says, and by the way, they spend their time contradicting the logos, beating you down in a debate or an argument. Of course, has a lot of tread on YouTube right now. People just shitting on people. Culture war nonsense. Just contradicting anyone who tries to make any progress or understand. Debate, that's what debate is pretty much. It's not about what's true or false. Lawyer fighting in court, it's not about what's true or false. It's, can I contradict your logos? So, he's really identifying the problems then and now. So it's time. It's time for Socrates to fulfill his destiny, fulfill his quest, sing his swan song, and save humanity. And save us. Give us what we need to understand the true spiritual quest, to know that there is a reality, so there is a spiritual quest, and know that it is rational. There are rules to it. It's not anything goes. It's not a matter of not asking questions and sitting quietly, counting your breath. So is it not the case that there would be a sad state of affairs if really there is a certain logos that is true and firm and capable of being understood? This is what we're after. True, firm, capable of being understood. But then having the experience and dealt with such logos at the one time they were believed to be true, but then untrue. They did not, by the way the word is cause, they did not recognize the cause was their own lack of art. But in the end, this, because of their suffering, shifted the blame to the logos itself. If there is a logos, there is a paradigm that is true and firm, and understandable. But because of the what we suffer as humans from other people who use the logos in various different ways, especially in contradiction, human beings' lack of the ideal, being somewhere between these two ladders, somewhere along both of those ladders, by the way, because of the human's use. And he said, hey, that's part of the art. Having the ideal is rare. Maybe how many Socrates are there out there? Very few, not many, if any. So not recognizing that is one of the causes, he said, to why we get duped and become start out on the villain's path. But because of the human's lack of the ideal, to not blame your own lack of art, to be able to judge them where they're at and where they're stuck, and specifically their logos, because how will you know where they're at and where they're stuck unless you listen to their words? Because the logos communicates your vision and your understanding, also your particular logos that's idiosyncratic or unique to your family. You might call yourself stupid head every now and again. You might have a friend who says great things, but before he says it, he'll shoot himself in the foot. He'll say, oh, I'm stupid and dumb. But then I think, so why do you always say you're stupid and dumb? Of course, many cultures, that's part of being culture. Like if there are, I know of many cultures and groups where if you don't say first, oh, I'm dumb and stupid, and then you say the good thing, then the rest of the group will jump in and shoot you down. Kind of like a ritual. You have to beat yourself up, otherwise we'll beat you up. Because you have to realize your place. So this is, of course, not true and not needed and harmful, because you shouldn't hurt the logos and the self. That's insane and unjust. But those idiosyncratic uses of words can tell you about where you're stuck, the nature of your problem. And of course, there are certain cultures that are like the British stiff upper lip or the Australian tall poppy syndrome. Stiff upper lip means you can't be honest and true about your feelings or even talk about feelings. You have to act stoic is the expression. Tall poppy syndrome is if you can't be good at anything or acknowledge you're good at something, because then the poppies that stick out get cut down. So everyone's the same height. And so on. So, to use the art of the logos in judging humans and the logos itself. This is what we need. Socrates ain't going to be here to help us all the time. In fact, he's like, he gave them a dialectic on the logos and the immortality of the soul, but it only took a few moments of Simmias and Cebes to get them to distrust what they just saw. Socrates ain't going to be around to do this for them all the time. So now he's saying, not only will I vanquish the, not only will I vanquish the logos of Simmias and Cebes. Here we go. But I'm saying you need to learn the art of the logos so you can do it yourself. And humanity needs to do it ourselves. And we need to do it ourselves. We need to ourselves learn the art of the logos. So we don't become villains and we don't suffer the greatest sick condition, the greatest defect and state or condition within ourselves. For our own well-being, for our own happiness, for our own functioning, and for our own spiritual growth and reincarnation. So if he's going to be a true hero, yeah, he can slay the particular villain, but he's going to give us what we need to become heroes ourselves. And it's time. It's curious that he said this 2,000 years ago or more. And only now has it come to light, is the conditions for this to come into light. There have been 1,500 years of oppression against this, of a counter-attack to this. Those that contradict the Logos have been in power and are in power today. And all of the things he talked about then are true today. The war, the genocide, the civil discord, the hatred of the Logos, the hatred of the intelligible. Those in power are those that contradict the Logos, and they claim there is no skill and rules of the art. There is no paradigm. There is no Logos. There is no reality. There is nothing true and firm and capable of being understood in this universe. This is our tradition right now. But for us to have this, for us to recognize the stakes at such a high level, look at humanity right now, look at what we're all suffering through. Look at the implications of the nuclear weapons that we all have. We can end our species right now. So the stakes are, you can't get higher. Stakes are the highest. Not only that, only now do we have this translation of Socrates' swan song, greatest hero work, with the Greek. Okay, certain conditions need to be in place because of the internet, because of the way learning has been opened up, not just to the official academics. And you can't get that position unless you play ball and you accept the certain traditions and the certain cultural pathologos or anti-logos. Otherwise, you won't get the qualification. We don't have that anymore. Anybody can be a philosopher. Anybody can play the game. Anyone could like and subscribe to the podcast or whatever. Anyone can. We have the internet now. Not only that, for there to be this translation which has the Greek and has a more accurate understanding of the key terms of the self-logos, we needed to have a translator who himself was a philosopher and who had a philosophical teacher who was able to help him learn the art of the logos. The conditions for someone to rediscover the spiritual and true, firm, capable of being understood logos required travel only in the last century. Required people from America to travel to the East and recognize and participate in the spiritual traditions, and then engage in this academic study to realize, oh, this is a spiritual work. This has been taught as a political work, as has the Republic, or as an academic exercise. It's not. Of course, we have Dr. Pierre Grimes, who was, along with his friend Alan Watts, were one of the first Western academics to travel to the Eastern areas and study with great enlightened spiritual gurus, and of course the conditions of the 60s, the birth control pill and acid, giving Westerners freedom from the body with the birth control pill and the ability to have an experience of enlightenment in a pill form. Because, hey, what have they been grown up with the teachings that there is no soundness of reality? You can't know the nature of heaven. Heaven is not a state of mind. It's some place you go to when you die. Maybe, if you're good. Oh, and you can't understand the nature of God. It's just faith. There are no logos that's understandable. There are no rules and skillful use of that paradigm. So we required the 60s to be able to wake up to these counterattacks, the problems that were around even in Socrates' time. And due to that, those conditions, we had someone like Dr. Pierre Grimes who came along and mastered the art of the logos and taught our translator. So we have the text that we ourselves can read. So not only do we have the conditions for the greater stakes, we have the conditions for Socrates' swan song to come into fruition. This is amazing. It's the most tumultuous time, but it also has the most potential. We have what we need to be able to understand that which is capable of being understood. The soundness and stability of the realities, the art of the logos, the skillful use, the techne of that logos through the dialectic paradigm. It's time. It's his time right now. It's his time. It's the time for the logos, evolutionarily speaking. So if we took the logos as the paradigm or the skill, and we applied it not just to ourselves who have to wake up to the logos, so we can apprehend truth of being, we can apply that to society. What level of this ladder is society on? Well, it's one right before the awakening of the logos. Meaning we have the conditions to cause our problems, we don't have the conditions to discover the logos and address the anti-logos and the pathologos. But we have it now. That's why we're on the cusp. We have the text. We have those who have mastered it. They're exceptionally rare, of course, just as it's exceptionally rare for there to be a super tall dog or a Wembenyama tall person. But it's there. So it's time now. It's time for the one that is knowable and its understanding to be shared with all. The one for all. Now, what happens if we have this great defect and we don't recognize it's because of our lack of the art of the logos? We would spend the rest of our life hating and reviling the logos. So it doesn't matter what Socrates did in his life, if he's not only able to, number one, vanquish the logos of Simius and Cebes, but also give them what they need to develop the art themselves. And you can't tell people it. You have to create the conditions for them to learn it themselves. That's learning. So somehow in this text, there has to be the conditions for us also to learn the art of the logos. If he's not able to do that, then whatever he teaches them, some dude is going to come along, push their buttons, use the mythology or the metaphors that kind of they're familiar with, part of their culture, part of their religion, harmony or the last coat you wear. And so all of the good that Socrates did, they will just contradict, and then they will end up feeling like, oh, I've just got a blow. I've been betrayed by the logos. I've been betrayed by philosophy and Socrates. Therefore, in fact, the more good Socrates does with sharing the logos and helping people understand, the more he's giving them, the more he's providing the conditions for these blows. These blows. The logos as being true, followed shortly afterwards by believing it to be false. By being so at times, whereas other times not being so. Whoops. So if Socrates is giving a lot of times where it's true, then he's also providing the conditions for when they get contradicted after he's not here anymore. He's up at the real club. For it to be then proven wrong, which would be a suffering of a blow, which will get them to eventually develop the worst condition, to hate and revile the logos, And what's the significance of that for their souls? Not only will they become part of this tradition, become a mouthpiece for this continuing villainy and injustice, which we're living out the implications of right now in human history, but they will be deprived of the truth and being and of knowledge. If you hate and revile the Logos, not only is it the anti-light you're shining, but you will be yourselves not bright. You will be deprived of your reason for existing, your reason of learning, your reason of being here. Hey, they became alive. They had to survive long enough to, in this crazy world, and it's not crazy, rational world, but difficult at times for a lot of people, survive in it long enough to meet Socrates and engage in learning and risk it. As we have, anyone watching this, you've had to go through a lot to be where you are right now. And there had to be a lot of conditions that you had to meet to be even listening to this right now. For all that, to not be able to reach your destiny, to be deprived of the truth of beings and knowledge, that's the stakes, that's the problem. That's what he doesn't want to have happen. So, now we see what Socrates has to do. Not just disprove the anti-logos, the contradiction to the logos, but give us what we need to ourselves learn the art of the logos so that we can finally get what we're after. The truth of beings and knowledge, which he just said was the whole reason, for the sake of, let's find it here, for the sake it is for the sake of these beings do we become a lover of learning, a philomethesis, and do we develop the virtues, become orderly and virile, temperance and courage. The soul of the courageous philosopher must follow the logos. Develop a calm from our emotions. Do not imprison our soul with our vibes, following pleasures and pains, but reach the calm from those emotions so you can always commune with the true and divine and behold that which is beyond opinions and escape from your human problems. Following the logos, that's why we do what we do, for the sake of these beings. And hey, if we don't learn the art while doing that, then we'll be deprived of that for the sake of which we stayed here. We came across these talks, this podcast. We're reading along. We're applying it ourselves. We're defining it and demonstrating. We're risking it. Deprived of the truth of knowledge and beings, that for the sake of which we did all these things. Big stakes. The cause of villainy, the cause of the greatest defect within our soul. The end of humanity, and our souls being deprived of the truth and knowledge of the being, that for the sake of which we have done everything up until this point. So, Socrates is really illuminating for us why this is his swan song, why this is the greatest hero story. He has to say, he not has to save the logos, but he has to impart, he has to pass on his art to us. Otherwise, all of the good things he did can just be the conditions for the contradiction so that we can distrust the logos. Oh, that's a blow. I learned all these things from Socrates, but now I've got even more reason to feel betrayed by the logos. I'm going to end up hating and reviling the logos, becoming a mouthpiece for injustice and villainy, as well as my soul being deprived of everything for the sake of which I've done everything up until my life and to this point. Everything we've done has been for the sake of truth of beings and knowledge. It's got you here. Thumbs up. Thumbs up for being here. 2 thumbs up for being here. Balloons for being here. Confetti. Claps for being here. So let's see if we can do it. If we're here, our next job, our next quest is to learn the art of the logos. If we can do that, we have what we need to be a true hero, as Socrates is. Or, if Socrates can't, not only vanquish the particular villain, the Logos of Simius and Cebes, that probably rings true to a lot of us. We kind of feel like, oh, we fear death. Our soul might not last this life after our death. Who knows? Can anybody know? Is there any... You can't know. You can't know the realities. You can't know what happens when you die. And also, you can't understand it. Logos and being, these 2 things, are not sound, understandable, and real. True today as it was then. Exactly. At best, you can guess. But Socrates is saying, hey, you can understand reality. You can understand what happens when we die. You can experience it. That's the truth of knowledge and beings. That's for the sake of which we do all this learning. And it is understandable and true and firm. There is a certain logos that is true and firm and capable of being understood. It has a soundness and stabilities, both the realities and the logos, our understanding, and therefore it can be an art. If it's an art, it can be skillfully used, techne. And if it is a skillful, if there is an understandable art that follows a set of rules, that's a paradigm, we call it the dialectic, reaching to reality, that for the sake of which we do everything, then therefore there is a kind of a mastery and use of it for benefit that makes it an art. If there is the paradigm, if there is the understandability, if it does have an ultimate goal, an ideal, then we have the conditions for art. But it's very easy to be knocked off. Nobody's come back from the afterlife to tell us, therefore, yeah, they have. But that sounds convincing. There is no way of understanding the cause of problems. There is. But that sounds like you're saying the right thing. There is no actual realm of being you can experience for yourself. There is. But that kind of sounds right. I don't know a lot of people who get there. The extremes are rare. There aren't a lot of Socrateses around. You can't understand the cause of problems and our highest destiny. You can. But it kind of sounds like you're saying the true thing because everybody around me in my culture says that. So, we don't know if this is our last life. We don't know what's going to happen to us when we die. Well, you can. But it kind of sounds like what you're saying is true because that's the way we've been brought up. So this is the stakes. If we have the art of the logos, we can't be like knocked around like that because that's a blow. You read the Phaedo, you learn that there is a knowable reality and you can know what happens to you when you die, and there is an understandability, there is an art of the logos, but then you get these blows. Nobody knows. If everybody knew, then surely there wouldn't be a million different religions. If there was a way of understanding what's true, then we wouldn't have so much tyranny in the world. These are all blows. Yeah, you kind of it sounds right, it's familiar. And this can get us to end up hating the logos or reviling the logos and becoming one of these people ourselves, spend our time contradicting the logos, thinking that we're wise because we have thoroughly understood by saying that there is no knowable reality and understandability. We can become a villain. We can be knocked off our path to our destiny unless we have what we need ourselves to judge. Oh, you're saying that? You must be here within this. You say that you can't know what happens when you die? Oh, your vision is only reached here. You haven't reached a vision of the realm of being yet. Oh, you claim that there is maybe an afterlife, but you can't understand it. You can't understand what heaven is like. Oh, maybe you've reached a vision up here, but your understanding is way down here. So I can see where you are, where you're at. Oh, by the way, the reason why you're stuck here and you're stuck here, this is where you're stuck. There's the two questions you can ask a human being. Where are you at? Where you're stuck. That's it. That's the whole thing. And if I have an art, I can judge. A doctor has to judge. And of course, a lot of our problems is don't judge. Hey, it's rude to judge. It's mean to judge. It's arrogant to judge you're better than somebody else. So these are pathologos from our society, or anti-logos against the logos, that cause us to be stuck where we're stuck. And therefore, we might be stuck here, and the reason will be this. You can't judge. You can't understand. You can't know being. You can't know what happens when your soul dies. So this belief causes you to be stuck here. So these two ladders are intertwined. It's like a double helix. Dialectic. Dialectic is two things. It's an interplay of where we're at and where we're stuck. Our logos and our anti-logos, or pathologos. So to be able to judge requires, this is the art. The art. So we start by trusting the logos, but of course we did that before. We did a little dialectic on the logos. We pulled out, okay, what is the logos? Well, okay, dialectic, the logos, that's our starting definition. How does it demonstrate? We want to share in the logos. What were the key terms from the text? That were the divisions. We look back. We watched the Socrates looked at the logos coming from the self. We can call in the logos. We can pursue the logos. We can receive the logos, and we have to trust the logos. We recognize that of this division stage, this one was more encompassing, so we should trust the logos. But then Socrates came in and said, by the way, if you were reading, you probably came to the conclusion, because you did a dialectic on the logos, that take this back to the start, that synthesis analysis, that you should trust the logos. Then Socrates said, by the way, so this is our, here we go, number 4, trust the logos. Socrates said, by the way, if you trust the logos without the art of the logos, without using the art of the logos in that trust, you can create the conditions for the greatest defect, preventing you from reaching the whole reason why you became a lover of learning and why you've been developing the virtues for the sake of knowledge and truth of the beings. By the way, those who say you can't know when you die, well, that's what beings are. Where do you think that lives? Not in the physical world. All learning is remembering of that. Of course we can know it. Therefore, if you don't have the art of the logos in that trust of the logos, you can cause the conditions for the greatest defect of your soul, preventing you from reaching your destiny and becoming a villain yourself. Mythological villain. Someone who just contradicts the logos, says you can't know reality, says there's no understandability, says there's no paradigm of the dialectic, and says there's no techne or art. Techne, skill, and art of spirituality. Because this is states of consciousness. Of understanding. Because it's vision and understanding. Two sides of that. There's two rungs of that ladder. What are these called? If these are called rungs, what are these called? Okay, so the rungs are the levels. So this allows it to have the rules or the stages. So the rungs are the levels, and these two rails represent the state of mind. So there is an understandable and knowable level of states of mind. Let's write that down. Art of logos. And so we have the rungs are the stages, and the rails are states of mind. and understanding. States of mind or vision. What's your highest vision? What's the highest state of mind you've reached? So therefore, the art would that we need to judge where we're at and where we're stuck. So we can say where we're at. Where are you at, bro? And where are you stuck, bro? Two questions you can ask. And of course, in those questions, where are you at in terms of your state of mind or vision? What's your highest vision? And where are you at in terms of your understanding of that vision? Apply to whatever you're interested in. Now, politics, what's your vision for humanity? Or art, what's your highest artistic vision? And of course, how well do you understand that vision and can communicate it? Now, we are interested in the highest vision of reality. We can use politics or art to mythologize it, or to see the implications in real time, because humanity is at somewhere and stuck somewhere. This applies to humanity as well. So this is the art. Socrates has to demonstrate, or define and demonstrate. He has to do the art on the art. If the art involves stages, the dialectic, if these things are part of the logos, so we have the dialectic and the logos, our goal of being at the top. So we talked about the logos, the structure of the dialectic, directed towards being. This is dianoia, or understanding. Then the dialectic, which has 4 parts, he has to define the art of the logos. He has to demonstrate the art of the logos by giving us what we need to develop it ourselves. Because he's leaving. And of course, we talked about this being the time. Right now is the time. Right now is the time we can learn it. Right now we can go from where humanity is here to here, where the logos lives. The logos isn't at every level. In fact, we talked about, hey, most of the people who claim to be wise, or they're the ones who have understood completely, say there is no logos. So they're at some level of the ladder where there is no logos, or they believe that. So Socrates has to, let's write this down. The ideal hero story. Let's say Socrates has to Soc as the word is perfect in the text, but we can also use the word ideal. The ideal hero must define the art of the logos. He must demonstrate it. He must divide it up. Demonstrate it. Divide it up into key terms and structure, so that we have the material to ourselves learn it, because he's not going to be around forever. And 4, synthesis and analysis. That's what we have to do, right? So we can synthesize and analyze it to synthesize and analyze, so to learn it ourselves. Otherwise, he's just giving us logos. That's true. That will be contradicted when he's gone. That will be a kind of a blow to us. And then the accumulation of those blows cause the greatest problems. And in mythology or played out physically is villainy, but also for our soul. We won't reach our destiny. The truth of beings and knowledge, that for the sake of which we become a lover of learning and exist at all. We're all lovers of learning. Just a matter of how long it takes us to wake up to philosophy. So now we see the architecture, we see the structure of the text, we see the stakes of the text, and now we have a goal for ourselves. Can we ourselves, this is our goal, learn the art of the logos? We could say, well, if those are the stakes, Socrates is really painting himself into a corner. He has to, if this is his swan song and he's the ideal hero, he has to define the art of the logos, demonstrate it, sure, but he has to do so in such a skillful or techne or artful way by dividing it into its key terms and structure so that we can apply ourselves. All the way through we've been saying philosophy is to be on a quest.
You're a wizard, Harry.
It's an activity. It's not just defining it, but we have to demonstrate it. We have to apply it to our lives. So if he's being a good teacher, he has to give us what we need for ourselves to apply ourselves to it, to learn it. Because he can't be here forever. The art of the logos can, so long as we can awaken it. So he has to teach us. And we have to ourselves not just define it, but demonstrate it to make it ours. So he's really setting up the conditions. And then we can say, well, on one sense, we can judge him, because that's part of the art of the logos, judgment. Did Socrates succeed? Was he the ideal hero, or was the book rubbish and he failed? But then Socrates said, well, hang on a second. Hang on a second. Maybe you don't want to blame the logos, but blame your own use of the art. So in one sense, we could say, oh yeah, we can blame Socrates. He didn't really get there. The book didn't succeed in its vision. Most books don't. Of course, because we're human beings, and therefore we're going to be somewhere between here and here. So we can say whether or not this book succeeds. Or we can say, hang on a second, maybe the reason why it didn't succeed is because we didn't apply ourselves. Our own lack of art. But that's what we're doing here. This is why this channel is so cool. We're doing it. We're reading it together. And we are, if it says, hey, you should be reflecting and repeating and going back to the beginning. We've been doing that. We have a lot of recaps. We summarize where we're at before we start reading further. We gain a new understanding and we go back in the text. Look at the highlighted section. He said, well, dialectic is the method. Look at all the dialectics we've done. We've been gathering the key terms. Look at all of our work we've done together. Aren't we great? We're great. Look at all the work we've done. But not only that, we have been arranging our work, arranging our collection of terms into dialectics. We've been doing it. See? Here's a self to self, self to other over there of whether or not being is. Philosophy is to the soul over there. So even in our notes, we're applying dialectic. Over here, we have a complete dialectic. Well, almost. If playing the dialectic game relative to the soul. So S is dialectic, O is soul. Oh, we applied our insight of the dialectic to our reading. We started by asking the question, what is philosophy and how do we do it? We realized that philosophy demonstrate the definition here. So, what is philosophy and how do we do it? Philosophy, that's the Oh, by the way, once we learnt the dialectic, we went back and we applied it. Oh, the question, what is philosophy, is asking for the definition. The question that we've had, how do we do it, is asking for demonstration. That's 1 and 2 of the dialectic. How do we define it? Understanding and knowledge. Dianoia and nous. Oh, wait a minute. Understanding, that's the definition. Demonstrating your understanding in your direct experience, that's nous. Definition and demonstration. Okay, so what is it? What is this dianoia that we have to demonstrate? Well, it's the self-logos and the dialectic. Self-logos being the key terms, that's definition. Dialectic being is how it functions or structured. Definition and demonstration again. Then we realize, well, hang on a second. If we've been doing this the whole time, let's add the extra 2 parts: definition, demonstration, division, and synthesis analysis. Let's apply it to the text. The definition is Socrates' doctrine. That's the first part of the text. His demonstration with his 4 arguments for the immortality of the soul. Division, that's where we're at now. Okay, this 4 arguments for the immortality of the soul. How would you divide them up? Well, you either learn it through the art of the logos. So we've got art of the logos here now. Or whatever these arguments, these demonstrations of Socrates' philosophy, whatever you learned can be division is where you play out the implications of if it is or if it isn't. You'll come across someone who doesn't have philosophy, if it isn't, doesn't have this doctrine, and they will contradict the logos in a way that might sound familiar or convincing, and then you will end up, if it isn't, you'll end up playing out these stages, the divisions of the greatest defect of the soul. Becoming a villain and hating human beings. Having the greatest defect of the soul, hating the logos. Which will end up, synthesis analysis, conclude with you not reaching the truth of beings and knowledge. And of course, division, another division affecting your cycle of reincarnation, your next incarnation, and so on. But also, he's been giving us what it isn't, which is a writing tool, meaning he gives us the negative. We have to do the positive. We have been doing the division stage ourselves for what it is. We have been seeing, oh, this is the ideal hero's journey. This is the stakes of the ideal hero's story. This is what he has to do. He has to not only defeat the particular villain, he has to give us the art of the logo so we have what we need when he goes. So if philosophy is, then he will be the ideal hero. This is what it is. So we're doing this division stage for what it is. He's been giving us what it isn't. He's been giving us the story of hating humans and hating the logos. We have been doing the division stage of what it is. If we do have it, then we will have, if we follow his doctrine, we will have in our division stage of what is the art of the logos. And another division, by the way, the division is hero, we can save humanity, we can save our soul, we can fulfill our destiny, that for the sake we are lover of learning. So these are all divisions, and we took all those divisions and synthesized it together and say that's the art of the logos. So that's where we are in the text. So let's write that down. So if it is, so we need to make some space. If it isn't, need more space than we'll find here. Yeah, let's just start here. So if it isn't in the division stage, greatest defect and villainy. If it is, greatest, he used the term perfect soundness, wholeness, and sanity. So greatest, how would you call that? The greatest state of mind, the greatest, state of mind. Let's say state of mind. State of mind. And the greatest state of mind, that's health and excellence. So that it's in the text, it was perfect or ideal. Perfect, ideal, health and excellence. Health and excellence. Or played out within the metaphor. Okay, the metaphor was hating humans as to hating the logos. So, hero. So our synthesis and analysis of that we just did is the either the mastery or the lack of mastery or lack of the art of the logos. So yay, so we've gone back and we've finished these next sections of the text. The mastery or the lack of the art of the logos would be our synthesis that we can use to better understand Socrates' doctrine. Socrates' doctrine was philosophy is the art of practice of death or dying, specifically through the development of dianoia, purifying and perfecting your soul, along with the virtues, creating a spiritual initiation into phronesis, the virtue of phronesis, and the realm of being. That for the sake of which we do everything. A lover of phronesis in the virtues, but a lover of being. That was his doctrine. So he gave us this. His demonstration was his 4 arguments for the immortality of the soul. And then he, and he also did the learning as remembering as well. So he gave us this. He then gave us what it isn't. So he's giving us what we need to do what it is. We had to realize, well, if that's what it is, isn't the greatest defect in villainy, then we have to ourselves solve the puzzle in the division stage and realizing, oh, it's the greatest state of mind. We will call that enlightenment nowadays. Spiritual enlightenment, the greatest state of mind, and also the health and excellence in the hero. So it's an enlightenment which also includes techne and art. It's not just the experience, but because the doctrine points out it's not just the experience, it's also the logos. And by the way, then we can ourselves, from what it is, realizing the greatest state of mind is both the health and excellence. That's the ideal, the sanity and wholeness and the ideal of consciousness. And we need both. That's the health is the purification, excellence is the perfection. We've seen that a bunch of times in the text. And then we can unify what's a word that summarizes this, synthesizes this, the mastery in the good, or the lack of in the bad, the art of the logos. So we had to do that. And what happens with the dialectic? You take it back to the start. What are we doing now? We're going back to what we did earlier. So what's another way, what's a new way of understanding Socrates' doctrine that we can see because we've leveled up our seeing? Because we are ourselves demonstrating what we're defining. We're not just defining the dialectic, we're doing it. What's a new way of understanding the Socrates doctrine? The art of the logos. That we have now with us and our seeing, and we can explain it. Hey, when Socrates gave his doctrine, he talked about the art and death of dying, the art and practice of death and dying, but how can you say that his doctrine is the art of the logos? Oh, let me explain it. I can demonstrate my dialectic to you. Because we've seen it ourselves. It's ours. We've done it. So he's giving us what we need to do this part. And we just pointed out that, hey, not only is that what we just discovered ourselves right now, but we just said Socrates has to do 3 and 4, create the conditions for 3 and 4. He has to not just demonstrate the art of the logos, he has to divide it up into key terms and structures so that we have the material to ourselves learn it, and so that we can synthesize it and analyze itself back. So we will learn the art of the logos ourselves and see it in a new way, greater than how he's defining and demonstrating it. He's not just passing on the torch, we improve it. He's not just giving us the one for all of us. By us participating in it, sharing it ourselves, we level it up, we improve the teaching, we improve that which is passed on. Because he's going to define and demonstrate the art of the logos, but also giving us the material so that we can synthesize it. What happens when you synthesize it? You go take it back. Synthesizing it is understanding it for yourself, but analyzing it too. The two of them, you take it back to the beginning and you see what was defined in a new way. This is the leveling up process. This is the spiraling up double helix of the dialectic. So we get the tradition from a rare and exceptional hero, the ideal hero. Socrates is the ideal hero, and he's passing on his quirk. He's passing on his teaching to us so that we can save ourselves and save humanity. But if we do that, for us to gain the teaching, we ourselves will be leveling it up, because that's what the dialectic does. So we are part of this tradition. We are becoming ideal heroes ourselves, because the ideal hero does this. The ideal hero defines and demonstrates it, but then he does this stage, gives us what we need to pass it on to somebody else so that we can improve it ourselves, improve the art of the logos, improve the tradition, add to it, level it up. And of course, wouldn't the greatest hero do that? If there was an ideal hero, wouldn't he be able to define it? Wouldn't he demonstrate it and act in that way? But is that the ideal hero? Because I can come up with a better hero. A hero who does these two things too, but also passes it on. That's an even, wouldn't you say, necessarily in definition, that is one extra thing, therefore more ideal? So an ideal hero who defines and demonstrates it but passes it on is the ideal hero. I can go one better. An ideal hero, you can add one thing, you can make it even more perfect. So this isn't perfect because I can add to it. Passes it on in a way that the people who get it next can improve the quirk, improve the teaching, improve the doctrine, add to the teaching, add to the tradition. So all of this, remember we talked about conservative versus progressive. Conservative is to be bound in the cave of ignorance. Inside our way of being is good, make America great again, all that crap. Well, hang on a second. There's no improvement, progression. And this is what the ideal of progression should be. So I can say, hey, that's not people who have these three, they define it, they function as the ideal hero in their lifetime, and they pass it on to someone when they go. I can think of a better tradition. They pass it on in a way where it can be improved. By definition, that's a more ideal hero. Therefore, we can use the dialectic ourselves to understand what the heck is going on. We wouldn't have seen this had we not been applying the dialectic ourselves all the way through. We had to be defining and demonstrating. We had to be doing these two stages, following Socrates. So we could say this is a conversation between Socrates and us. We do these two, he does these two. He defines and demonstrates it in the text. We have to divide it up into key terms. We have to look for the structure. We have to synthesize it and analyze it ourselves. So it's a dialectic. We are in a dialectic with Socrates, and we can understand the particulars of the dialectic with the dialectic. And in doing so, we understand the very story. If this is his swan song, and Socrates' swan song wouldn't be anything less than the ideal hero, right? Well, what is the ideal hero? Would we have seen that the ideal hero has 4 parts had we not been doing this the whole time? That's the significance of this channel and this community and this podcast. We're doing it. It's a doing. It's not an opinion. It's not, these are my opinions that I've had, blah, 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 blah. No. We're improving. We're seeing more and more and more and more. And we can only do it by being a hero ourselves because, hey, if we are better understanding what the necessary, this will always, if this is a paradigm, if this is necessary and true, this will always be the case, no matter where you are, no matter what story you get. Wouldn't Superman be better if he could pass on his ability to somebody else? And not only that, if they could improve on on how far he went? Of course it would. This is always going to be true. That's what we're learning. It is, what's the word? Stable and true. The things that are, there is no truth and stability in reality. No, there is, and we're learning it. But we wouldn't see it if we weren't playing. We're not being baby fed it. It's not marketing. Hey, I'm telling you what to think. Marketing, that's big industry in our world at the moment. No, it's offering you, do you want to play? Do you want to play? It's the best game in town. It's the only game in town, really. It's the only game you'll ever play. And you're always playing it. It's just a matter of whether or not you want to play it well and consciously. It's that for the sake of all learning. And if it's our destiny, it's the sake of all life. So whether you go to a different planet, a million years in the future, this will be the ideal hero. Always. And you will only see it for yourself if you can do it. And so, in your art, in your mythology, in your comic books, in your fan fiction, however you want to mythologize your own dialectics, now you can see what the ideal hero of your story can be. Has to be, if he's going to be ideal. In fact, you could play if it is and if it isn't. You could write you could have one character representing if it is, and have another hero who's really, really good, but he's ranked number 2. And the interplay or the relationships between the two can demonstrate the differences. Why this is the ideal hero and why the number 2 ranked hero is good, but not great, not ideal. That'd be a cool story. I'd read it. I'd watch that movie. And by the way, if you do that, you'll be defining it in your dialectic, you'll be demonstrating it in your mythology, but if you too can provide bits and pieces of key terms and structure in the material of your art, so that somebody else can figure it out in a new way that will provide greater insight into what you're doing, you will yourself be not only defining and demonstrate, you'll not only be defining the ideal hero in your work, you will be demonstrating it in your own self. You'll be doing it. You'll be walking the walk and talking the talk. So not only are we defining the ideal hero for your work, we're defining what you might be as the author. So you can demonstrate it, because the reason we mythologize it is to give us something to practice. Yeah, we share it, we benefit, we illuminate others, but it's our own light. So the next thing that you make, not only have you defined the ideal hero, and you'll demonstrate it in your work, but you will have yourself understood what it will mean for you. And if you write in this way, allowing stages 3 and 4 for others to pass on your teaching to others so they can get it and improve it, you will be able to demonstrate the very hero you're defining in your work. So, really cool, really cool. So we're seeing what the ideal hero is, and that's, of course, important. That's the theme of the work. He said, I'm not only going to define, I'm not only going to slay the logos of Simius and Cebes, I'm going to show you the art. In other words, for you to do it yourself. And right here, I'm not only going to be the ideal hero, I'm going to not tell you what it is so you can work it out for yourselves. And in doing so, you'll have to be exercising it. And if you're not doing it, you're not doing it. Maybe next incarnation, if you're lucky. But if you are doing it, wow, you're in the game. That for the sake of learning. I mean, you're doing what you actually want to do anyway. I know it might not feel right, and the arguments against the logos feel more true, but that's the human thing. We purify ourselves from that. I know there's counterattacks. Oh, I'm not good enough to do it. I can't write like that. I can't be that. No. Yeah, of course, that's part of it, because we all have both ladders. But the irony is, all of the things on this ladder that says you're not good enough to do it, you're doing it anyway. You can't not be somewhere between here. So it's a matter of, well, if you're doing it anyway, if this is the sake for which you do everything, jump in the pool. Have fun. No, I can't. Well, you're in the pool anyway. Whether or not you want to have fun in the pool is up to you, but you're in the pool anyway. No, but I believe there is no pool. Okay, you can believe that, but you're still in the pool. You can believe there is no logos, there is no being at the top, there is no understandability, there is no states of enlightenment. You can believe that, but you are going to be in a state of mind when you say that. You are going to be expressing a kind of understanding when you reject it. You are going to be in some sort of participation with being, to be even imagining a state of being. You're imagining an ideal. You're imagining beauty itself. You're imagining equality itself. You can't have that imagination if it didn't exist in some way and be affecting you. So even if you deny the ladder, you're still on the ladder. We're all philosophers. It's just a matter of realizing that we're playing a game and learning the rules and playing with excellence. And another way of saying that, playing the hero's game, or playing the human game, being what we are, is, whether we like it or not, we're in the ideal hero's game. Because if lover of learning turns into a lover of philosophy, and a philosopher is the ideal hero in the sense, then another way of saying what we're all here to do is to learn to be the ideal hero. We're in the ideal hero's journey.
You're a wizard, Harry.
No wonder all of the films that
I'm looking for someone to share in an adventure.
represent the stages of the hero's journey as seen by Joseph Campbell are appealing to us. Harry Potter, Star Wars, Hunger Games, you name it, they're all following it. And it's no wonder that every video game that has these same stages, a hero developing himself on that journey, is appealing to us. It's no wonder it has a universal appeal, because we're in it, we're doing it, we're playing it. Even the rejection of it is applying it. Even the rejection of there being an understandable, knowable reality is one of the stages of reality. And this is the thing about it being an ideal. If it is an ideal, if this is necessarily what would define the ideal hero, and we've understood it ourselves, and we can demonstrate it ourselves, then what we're learning is a kind of learning that will apply anywhere. Different species, a different planet, a million years in the future. Therefore, it's a kind of learning that we can take with us beyond this lifetime, because we're learning about that which is true and universal. The very things that those claiming to be philosophers say doesn't exist. There is no soundness or stability in the realities, in the logos, and there are no rules of art and skill in the art, techne. There is no logos that is true and firm and capable of being understood. Well, of course they say that, and they believe they are the most wise and they alone have thoroughly understood because they say these things. That's what makes them cleverer than the experts. And of course, we've talked about how this is the appeal that people who want to manipulate play on. Oh, you want to feel wise because everyone wants to reach wisdom. That's why we're here. Yeah. Oh, but you don't have the conditions for education because I've passed, that's the system. Well, you can claim to be wiser than the doctors by saying that there is no understanding. There is no medical science. You are smarter because you've realized there is no understanding. There is no logos. You are wiser than Socrates because you are saying there is no ultimate reality. There is no meaning of life. So all you got to do is reject what the experts say, and then you can pretend or feel or cosplay at being wise. That's the shadow of the logos. That's what all manipulation is based on. Racism. You are, and then we have a quote, you are smarter than other people who are actually smarter than you because you know that they're dumb. You know black people are bad, or you know people from a different country are bad. That's the appeal. And then we've got a quote here. If you convince the lowest white man he's better than the best colored man, he won't notice when you're picking his pocket. Hell, give him somebody to look down on and he'll empty his pockets for you. So those who make into a virtue ignorance, the contradiction of the logos. They spend their time contradicting the logos. They're the scammers. So you'll be able to see this in every scam you come across. Are they offering you a feeling of being wise, but they're just contradicting? Now Socrates is doing the opposite. Whoops. And that's where we are in the text today. He's outlined what would be the conditions for the ideal hero? He said, look, not only will I vanquish the logos of Simius and Cebes, I have to do it in a certain kind of way. Why? Because if you trust me and I just vanquish the logos, then when I'm gone tomorrow, because he's being put to death, someone's going to come along and talk like this argument of Simius and Cebes. They're going to use a mythology that you're familiar with. It's going to be reflected in your religion. It's going to sound right. And then you are going to feel, and you're going to actually say, well, I once believed the logos to be true, and shortly after it seemed to be false. Sometimes it was true and false. And then you will end up thinking that the logos is base and untrustworthy. Be let down. The same way a villain is let down by people he thought were trustworthy, truthful, and sound, but then, and especially the ones he thought should be his nearest and dearest friends, and after many blows he hates everyone and believes there is no ideal state of mind. Perfect wholesomeness, soundness, sanity. So this is the health and excellence of consciousness. Perfect, ideal consciousness. There is no, doesn't exist in anyone. And that's why the villains want to destroy the humans or whatever, or enslave that race, or play out their anger on other people. So just as that plays out against humans, so too with the logos. You have to realize not everyone is ideal. We're between the extremes. So if we had a contest of worthlessness, the winners would be very few. Only very few people would be actually worthless. Everyone is somewhere between their problem, where they're stuck, and excellence. So if you trust in the logos without the art of the logos, so even if I vanquish the arguments that show that sound convincing that the soul isn't immortal, even if I slay them, if you trust that without the art of the logos, you can be convinced after I'm gone that the soul, that there isn't a knowable, understandable reality in afterlife. Therefore, especially there's a lot of people who spend their time contradicting the logos in that kind of a way, and they think that they're wise, and they often have a lot of money and power because they're manipulative, and they think that they're thoroughly understood, and that there is no soundness or stability amongst the realities and the logos, and there is no paradigm and skill of that art. You'll blame the logos. You won't realize it's your own lack of an art. And then those will be the many blows. After many blows, you hate everyone. After many blows, you hate the logos. You hate philosophy. And of course, he mentioned earlier that those who are a lover of the body only are attracted to and think is most real and clear the physically sensed things, and only interested in things they can eat and have sex with. They hate being. They hate the realm that is knowable and experienceable in philosophy, the intelligible. Intelligible means understandable and knowable. You join with it and know it directly. So it makes it different from academic science. They're just theories, whereas this isn't just a theory. You verify it. It's important to verify it. It's the goal. Now, if you're a lover of the body and not a lover of learning that becomes a lover of philosophy, then you will be developing a hatred towards that which is being knowable. Now, Socrates say, hey, the worst condition isn't that. It's a hatred and reviling of the logos. And now we're seeing why. Because you need the art of the logos. Even if you hate being, if you follow the logos, you'll realize why you hated being. If you hate being, then you follow the logos, you'll reach being, and you'll realize it's the most real, beautiful, just. It's the paradigm for everything. So you won't hate it any longer. So therefore, the hatred of the logos is the greatest defect of the soul. And you get that not by just listening to Socrates' arguments, In fact, that could be the problem. If you listen to Socrates' arguments and then someone contradicts it, you'll think, oh, that's a blow. Well, that's a blow. Well, that's a blow. Hang on a second. Yeah, that stuff that kind of sounds like my Christian upbringing. That kind of sounds truer than what Socrates is saying about you can know the meaning of life. You can know the nature of what happens when you... In fact, philosophy is the art and practice of death and dying. You're supposed to experience what it's like to be dead. That doesn't sound like what I grew up with. I don't trust this logos. Right in the chat, out of the philosophies that you've read, which has the most impact on your life? Well, this is the thing. Socrates is saying there isn't philosophies. Philosophies means many. There's just one. There's only one philosophy. If you weren't convinced by these people who think that they're wise and they have understood that there is no soundness and stability among reality, the metaphysical, that which is non-physical, that which you can know when you separate the soul from the body. It's called metaphysical. It's prior to the physical. And it's all of the things that are non-physical that we recognize: beauty, justice, equality, sameness. You never see those things. Then how do we recognize it? Because we knew it before we were born. People who claim to be philosophers or claim to be wise say there is no reality like that, and there's no logos, and there's no rules or structure. So Socrates is saying here, therefore, we have to do the opposite. We have to take what the negative and flip it to the positive. Therefore, there is a reality, and there is a single logos, and there is a single art and skill. Meaning there is no philosophies. There's just reality. Now, the word philosophy means philos sophia, love of wisdom. That comes when you begin with a love of learning, by the way. You don't start as a philosopher. Philomathesis, Socrates pointed out in this text. This is what we've seen so far. If there are three parts of the soul, your desiring part, if you chase that, you become a lover of wealth or riches. The middle part of your soul, the part that wants you to move out in the world, do things, seeks fame or honor. You can become a lover of fame. But there's a part of your soul that plans and reasons. For your desire, plans what sandwich you want to eat. For your outward moving, plans what you want to do with your day. Now, if you're motivated by that higher part of your soul, you're a lover of learning. And if you pursue a lover of learning, you realize the things you're learning about require there to be a realm of being. For there to be two equal sticks that you're learning about, or geometry, or you learn about tree frogs, for there to be two equal tree frogs, you need to... Where did I get the idea of two from? Where did I get the idea of equal from? Can you explain that word? Therefore, you begin as a lover of learning in the physical senses, and then you realize there must be a realm of being. And if you begin to apply your understanding, or logos in the Greek, to the reality, you become a lover of wisdom, because that's what wisdom is. Applying your understanding not to the physical senses, but to the reality that exists eternally. That's dianoia in the Greek. Now, dianoia is a kind of purification of your soul from the ignorance and perfection in your understanding that makes you more like reality itself. That prepares you for the experience of nous, what we call knowledge, but nous means the experience of reality. Therefore, philosophy isn't one of many. It's applying our attention, our life energy, to learning the logos, which is the understandable pattern and structure, and applying that to being. What do you want to understand? How many tree frogs there are in Africa? Or do you want to understand the nature of ultimate reality that is pure, deathless, eternal, immortal? All of the words that we get from this text. So we pull out the words to understand these terms. So this text, the reason why we're reading this text is it gives us the terms that we can pull out and do an exercise of understanding on. And that exercise is called the dialectic. So therefore, this realm of being is beyond belief. It's not opinable. It's understandable, and it's experienceable. Nous is the experience. Dianoia is the understanding. So philosophy is the most important thing we can do, but it's the most misunderstood and mistranslated thing. Today we say, oh, it's just an opinion, it's just a belief. And there's many philosophies. Your aunt has a philosophy, my Uncle Joe has a philosophy, Hegel has a philosophy, Nietzsche has a philosophy. Who gives a shit? That's not what philosophy is. Philosophy is understanding the realm of being. That's what love of wisdom means. And Socrates says, hey, you become a philosopher so you can become a philophronesis. When you are able to experience that realm of being, and you've got understanding as your method, and you've been doing it, you've been demonstrating it, so you've got the virtues in your back pocket, that's a spiritual initiation. And he said, many are the people who claim to be spiritual, many are the staff carriers, but few are the actual mystics. And the ones who are the actual mystics are philosophers, because it's an understanding of all of the states of consciousness. So it's the spiritual tradition. Not a spiritual tradition, it's the spiritual tradition. It's understanding the ladder. So your question was about, do you believe there is eudaimonia? Now, I want to know what you think that word means first, so I know how to address your question. Because there are two questions that you can ask somebody: where you at and where you're stuck. Now, if philosophy is telling the truth, then there is a ladder of logos, a ladder of understanding, which has stages that we are going through. The rails of the ladder represent our states of mind and our understanding. Where is your highest vision? What's your highest experience? Not only that, how well have you understood it? You may have met a hippie who took a lot of acid at a festival, had this experience, but his understanding is down here. So this won't last long for him. Likewise, you have spiritual people who might be interested in whatever Eastern spiritual tradition, have this experience, but they don't have an understanding. So where are you at in your vision and understanding, but where are you stuck? Why are you stuck there? Do you think there is no level, there is no being? Do you think it's not understandable? Are you told children are to be seen and not heard, so you don't ask the questions you need to go to the next step? Are you attached to your particular tradition, and maybe your tradition reaches this level of enlightenment and doesn't want to go any further because everything above is illusion? The thing with philosophy is it doesn't play favorites. It understands the structure, the pattern, the paradigm it's called. And learning the logos and the paradigm, which we call the dialectic, allows us what we need to address where we're stuck and free ourselves from our pathologos or anti-logos, our false beliefs, and also to climb that ladder upwards to reach our destiny and free ourselves from our fate. So in a similar way, you asked a question about belief and about dianoia. About eudaimonia, the good daemon. So before I can fairly ask your question, I want to know where you're at and where you're stuck. So what's your puzzle about? Where are you stuck in understanding eudaimonia? Or what's your current level of understanding of eudaimonia? And then wherever you're at, we can together reach the next stage. According to Wikipedia, it's the condition of good spirit, is the aim of practical philosophy, prudence, and Aristotle's ethics. I thought it was a philosopher. Interesting. Okay. So, I'm guessing you're quoting Wikipedia because you agree with that. So from that answer, we can recognize two things. Where you at? Philosopher's high. So that's your vision. Your vision of what a eudaimonia is. It's a certain state of highness. and you have a certain understanding that leads you to that conclusion. Also, Aristotle's ethics might be where you're stuck, because Aristotle didn't get into metaphysics. He was a lover of the body. He wasn't a philosopher. Claimed to be a philosopher, of course. So if you believe in Aristotle, that could be a level where you're stuck. I don't know if you... that's how we would go about answering that question. Now, based on where you're at, we could look at the text and find where are the examples of the text where eudaimonia is mentioned. Let's do that now. Now I remember he did mention DAE. Let's look for. Now the trick with this is I can't search for Greek. So spirit maybe? Good. So the word eudaimonia breaks down to eu and daimon. Yeah. So here we go. Here's an example here. So at the beginning of the text, right at the beginning, page 3, we've got two people in the Phaedo. We've got Phaedo, who was there at the death of Socrates, and we've got Socrates, who wants to know what happened. And Socrates says, hey, can you tell me everything that you can about what Socrates was doing? Phaedo says, for me, I was present. It was a wonderful experience being present at the death of that man. I did not feel pity, for that man appeared like a good daemon to me. There's eudaimonia there, both in his disposition and logos, since he met his end fearlessly and nobly. And it occurred to me that neither in that place of Hades where he was going, he won't be without divine providence, and he would fare well there upon arriving, if anyone ever had. So this was the opening. So one of our questions in the text is that one you have now. So part of being a philosopher is to get a question like that. And this is our picture of a philosopher. Put it into your inventory. You have to collect good questions like that. Hold on to them for as long as you can. To hold on to a question is to be on a quest. To focus on your question takes you from concentration to meditation. We want to hold on to that question for as much as you can. So that's our question sack. This is you. You have a question like that. What is eudaimonia? Or eudaimon? Polish it up. Sharpen it like a sword in your inventory, or polish it up like a stone. Carry it with you in your question sack. Develop your own hypotheses about them. Carry them with you too. Many. You don't have to just take one. As we read the text, take these questions with you. We look for key terms in the text, of course, and reflect upon them. Look for patterns. Do you see triads? Do you see threes? Do you see fours? These are your skill trees. That's a good question. Hold on to it. In fact, it's one of the questions we have. If he's starting the text asking, hey, Socrates appeared like a good daemon to me. And because he appeared like a good daemon in both his state of mind and logos, his disposition logos, there's our two big aspects. What's spirituality about? Balloons. States of mind. What's understanding about? The logos. Those are the two rungs of the ladder. Your vision and your understanding of your vision. Your state of mind and your understanding about it. Can't have one without the other. Well, you can, but we want to develop both in philosophy. So it's the spiritual tradition and it's the academic tradition. Academic's the wrong word. It's understanding and knowledge. So something about his state of mind and his logos appeared like a good daemon. That's big. Second, Because of that, I concluded, or I judged, that he would have divine providence. So one question is, what the heck is divine providence? I want it. It sounds awesome. From the divine? Wow. Providence? That sounds like a goodness. And by the way, you would fare well. Yeah, no wonder. If I've got divine providence, I probably would fare well. I want both of those things. I want to fare well, not just in this life, but in the next. If anyone else ever had. So it's the best. So if anyone else would, as much as any human being could have divine providence and fare well in both this life and the next, it has something to do with being a good daemon, which has something to do with your state of mind and your understanding. And your character, fearlessly and nobly. That reminds me of courage. So here we have the virtues being referenced. Here we have state of mind and understanding. Here we have the stakes or the significance, why we should care. Divine providence, that sounds good. Faring well, both in this life and the next time, and the next life. So it's to do with our reincarnations as well. All of these stakes are tied to your question. What the heck is eudaimon then? Because it's all of it. So this question is the question of the text. How do you want to fare well in life? How do you want to be connected to divine providence? And in your next life. Hey, if we have incarnations, then this life is but a blip in eternity. If we're here for a reason, it'd be here to learn something. We can't take our Bugattis with us to the next life. What is the kind of learning that we would benefit from, that we're here to do, that we can take with us into our next place? Because that would be being rational. To ask the question of where we came from, where we're going, and what should we be doing here. And so this rational question is somehow answered to do with our state of mind and logos, but specifically a state of mind and logos. And connected to our virtues, fearlessly and nobly, to being a good daemon. So this is the stakes. Your question is the question that we're on, that we have, that we've been carrying since the beginning. This is top of page 3. Good question. Keep it with you. In fact, what you're doing by seeing the stakes, the end of Socrates' life, this life and the next, to do with the virtues, to do with our enlightenment and our understanding, adds more to your question, makes it more appealing, makes you able to focus on it more. To have sustained focus on your question is meditation. If you keep that up, you can go from meditation to contemplation. It's contemplation where you can experience the object of your meditation, which is why it's a good question. It has to be for it to be contemplation, it has to be a question about that which is knowable. That which is eternal, immortal, in the realm of being. Apprehendable with our ousia, the eye of the soul. So it's a good question. I hope this rereading the introduction adds more stakes to your question, makes it more engaging to you. Hold on to it. And as we read, you will learn how to approach your question, how to structure your key terms, because you've got some key terms to do with your question now. You've got state of mind, disposition, you've got logos, you've got divine providence, you've got the afterlife. So you have to add that to your question. So have a document open with your question. What is eudaimonia? So you got some key terms. By the way, those key terms that are to do with the realm of being, they're called self-er terms because we call them self-beauty, self-excellence. So look for key terms. Now, as you learn, you're going to learn how to structure those key terms. That's the dialectic. That's the exercise of the philosopher. And if you go back to our previous talks, he talked about how there is a kind of collecting of yourself together from all parts of your physical body, self by self, which prepares you to separate from your body. So if you do this, if you collect those key terms to do with your question, you learn about the dialectic, so you have a way of structuring those key terms in a certain order, skillfully, then you are preparing yourself to, that's called ousia, by the way. You're reflecting on your question. And it's a question about the self ultimately, because, hey, if it's a state of self that is the ideal, this eudaimonia, then you're reflecting on yourself, that's ousia. Then you're preparing yourself for that initiation into that experience. So you're in the game. If the universe came from nothing, in the chat, by the same phenomenon, parts of it may come and go. Thus, through phenomenon, the science of the universe may change. Yep. Yes, the back and forth. We've been reading about that in the text too. I think you really enjoyed the Phaedo. Thus, through phenomenon, the philosophies of the universe may change. It adds up to a big spiritual sack. Exactly. So what you're talking about is what we've been learning. So if you do this dialectic, you'll see that there are two categories. If something is and if it isn't. So if eudaimon is, that's side A of one document, and if it isn't. So, and by the way, exist. If it doesn't exist. If. So you also are learning about existence. What does it mean to exist eternally? Not this coming back and forth that you mentioned of the physical universe. That's not exist. We're not interested in that. We're interested in existence. That which is real, true, eternally so. So, is the eudaimonia something existing in the realm of being? What would follow? And there are four categories that you talk about. What can you say about it? How does it function? Self to another. Its division. How does that other relate to others? So, this is the dialectic that we're learning. And you're pointing out, hey, by the way, if you stay in the physical universe, which doesn't exist, but has a back and forth of opposites, hot and cold, growth and decay, then if eudaimonia exists here, what follows? What can you say about the subject? What can you say about how eudaimonia would function towards something? Function towards you? How then you would relate to others? So this is self and other. And then how you would relate back to eudaimonia if it doesn't exist but is only in the physical world. You got it. And you can ask that about anything. If philosophy exists, is philosophy something that it is, has an eternal existence as just one of them? Or is it just a back and forth of opposites, it's just in the realm of opinion? What could you say about philosophy if it was just then? It was just opinion. How does it function? How do people relate to each other if philosophy is just opinion? It's not a single philosophy, that's true. So this is the dialectic. I encourage you to go back and watch these videos and pick up the dialectic and apply them to your very, very good questions, and don't get rid of your questions. Apply them in the structure. Polish them up nicely. From the chat, can timelines fall out of eternity? I don't know about what timelines are. But if yeah, this is another good question. Okay, so another good question in the chat. So eternity. So eternity is. Okay, so another way of saying, so if you want to know what beauty is, if beauty is another way of saying if it exists, another way of saying if it's eternal. So if beauty exists, and then that's part A of your dialectic. Part B of your exploration or dialectic is if beauty, oh my goodness, B-A-U-T-Y, does not, oh my handwriting, does not exist. So beauty is in the eye of the beholder, they say, right? It doesn't exist. It's just a matter of opinion. So you'd have to find the 1, 2, 3, 4 categories of the dialectic, and you fill it out. You apply this question to the dialectic. If beauty does exist, is eternal, you do 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so now, your question is about eternity itself. So it's about the nature of existence. That's a very, very high dialectical question. So you're saying if existence is, but you're specifically talking about if eternity is. Okay, so eternity sounds like it's something more related to time. Eternity, the whole of time. Okay, so you have 4 categories of the dialectic. First one is self to self. And by the way, dialectic means 2. You've got 2 terms: self, which is your subject, eternity, and other. So you could pick something to rub up against it to understand it. So if eternity is self to self, what can you say about the subject itself? What can you say about eternity? So here's where you pull in everything you've learned about eternity. And that's why we read these texts. So there'll be parts in the text, lots in the Phaedo, where he talks about being or eternity. So you list all your terms here. The second paragraph of your dialectic, Bajib, is how does it function towards something else that you're learning about? How does eternity function? Now, because it's about eternity, it seems to be about time. And your question is about time. So while your self term is eternity, your other term seems to be time or timelines. So your second category that you would do, now that you've defined it in your first paragraph, self to self, how does this self you've defined roll over into the next paragraph? How does it function towards timelines? If eternity exists, how would it relate to timelines? And then, after timelines have been related to by eternity, how do timelines affect other things? So how do timelines play out in the physical world? That's category 3. How does it play out to others? And maybe how does the timelines affect others? How does it affect you? How does it affect philosophers? How does it affect people? And then finally, those people who have been affected, how do they, other back to self, how do they relate back to eternity? So these are the 4 categories within the dialectic. Notice I'm not giving you the answer. I'm saying it's a good question. You have what you need to practice the dialectic. It's the practice of the dialectic, kind of like your imagination, but it's not just imagination. You have to have terms from the text. That's why we read. That's why we read Plato, because he gives you the self-logos terms to populate it. But you have to imagine this. It's a what-if universe. What if? What if eternity exists? What could you say about eternity? How does it affect timelines? How do those timelines affect other people? And then how do other people then relate back to eternity? But then you have to do another essay. We don't have to, but if you want to play the game, because you're thinking about it anyway. Philosophy gives you the structure to organize your thoughts. What if it doesn't exist? If eternity doesn't exist, what would you say about it itself? If eternity doesn't exist, how does it relate to timelines? Maybe there isn't an eternal nature of timelines. Maybe timelines are just like one-offs, specks of dust in the wind. How do the timelines relate to us if they don't exist? So what if they don't exist? And then how would we relate to eternity having been affected by these timelines? Notice it's all you and it's all your imagination. But by going through it, you will go back to the start, because the last section is how do you relate back to the subject? You will have a greater understanding of eternity. Meaning you've learnt more, meaning you can do another dialectic again. But Socrates is saying, hey, don't just do this. Take all of those key terms and these key relationships and put them into a drama. You can use dramas that already exist. You can use characters that already exist. You can use Spider-Man, or you can use Harry Potter, or whatever you're interested in. Socrates used Aesop's fables, or you could create your own universe with your own characters. But each character has to represent one of these terms, and the way that they relate in the story has to represent the relationships. That's called mythology. So don't just do this dialectic on eternity in relation to timelines. Make a story, whatever you're interested in. If you're interested in music, make a song about it. If you're interested in painting, make a painting about it. If you make fan fiction about Spider-Man, make a fan fiction story. But you have to do two. What if it does and what if it doesn't? So a sequel. What if Spider-Man was bitten? What if Spider-Man wasn't bitten by the spider? And what's going to happen is you're going to not only understand your question better, but you're going to be polishing up what you need to see. Also, you're preparing your state of mind, you're focused, you're not interested in your senses, you're engaged in your imagination. Imagination about eternity, so it's an imagination about the realm of being, so it's meditation. This is why it's the spiritual quest. It's actual meditation. It's not meditate on a candle or something boring. It's actually something you're interested in. It's your own question. So you naturally will meditate on it. And if you're using it in your art, then you're going to be continually meditating on it, creating the conditions for you to experience eternity. That's why it's spiritual. You want to verify your understanding in your experience. It's not science. It's not, oh, we have a theory, but we can never know. No, you can know. That's the whole point. You can experience eternity. In fact, Socrates in the Phaedo has been saying, you have to. That's what philosophy is. Because that experience of the eternity, you have to separate from your physical senses to experience. And by the way, separating yourself from the body, that's death. So a philosopher studies and practices the art of death and dying all through his life. No wonder Socrates isn't concerned about where he's going to go after he's dead. He's been there. Lots. Probably, if he's been doing philosophy, right? So we want to know, well, how do we do that? This. You are, in engaging in this exercise, you're focusing your attention on eternity. You're naturally interested in it, so you don't have to be forced to meditate on something boring. You're developing an understanding, that's part of it. You're purifying yourself from your ignorance about these things, that's part of it. You go back into the text with a reason, like, I'm reading the Phaedo, but I want to know more about eternity, because I've got this question. So you have a direction for your reading, so that you can gain an understanding through your dialectic and verify it. That's nous, that's knowledge. That's why we don't say that there are many different philosophies. Because if there is eternity, then philosophy would be the study of it and experience of it. But in the Phaedo, Socrates said, hey, by the way, it's not opinion. It's unopinable. It's not about beliefs. You might start with your beliefs to do this, but if you structure your beliefs using terms from the text, you get something called understanding. That's better. And that understanding is also a stepping stone to experiencing it. That's contemplation, the upgrade of meditation. So you're in the realm of nous. You've gone from beliefs to understanding to knowledge. Yourself. And he said, by the way, share it with your friends. If there are other people in this game, and there are on this channel, when you do this dialectic on eternity versus timelines, and you've made a myth about it too, jump on the Discord and share them with people. Share your questions, share your insights, share your work. Because it's a two-person game, or it's not a one-person game. We're all in this game. And I might benefit, I might see something in your dialectic to help me with my question, because I might have a question about timelines and eternity. Do I have a good philosophical question? Well, I have that one about daemon that you mentioned. That's a big one for me. I got lots. I got a whole sack full. What is a daemon? What is an eudaimon? Good daemon? How do I be it? How do I function like it? Is there one? Is there many? This is another question I have. What is the nature of eternity? And how does it affect timelines? So this one here. If there are many different timelines, why am I in this timeline? What do I have to learn in this timeline? Why at this time, in this part of the country, in this part of the world, in this part of human evolution? What do I need to see as a soul here? And if I see it, so that would be, so we've got, here. So this is, what is eternity? Eternity. How does it, that's self itself. How does eternity relate to timelines? So are different timelines significant for eternity? Because there are a lot of apparent injustices in our physical world. In the experience of eternity, do we see how all of the timelines have to fit? That's a question. But not only that, so we take eternity in relation to timelines, self to others. We take that others, becomes section 3. Others in relation to others. Why? That's timelines. So timelines in relation to me. Why am I in this timeline? And do I have what I need in this timeline to sufficiently learn what I'm here to learn, to purify from my ignorance and perfect my understanding, to complete my cycle? Can this be my last timeline? And why this timeline? What is my puzzle? What is my problem? Finally, number 4 is, so this is timeline in relation to me. So this is me becomes the subject. How do I relate to eternity? How do I use my understanding of my particular timeline, my destiny, my purpose, to relate back to eternity? Because I want to see eternity. I want to reach being. All things do. Me especially. Even sticks, says Socrates in the Phaedo. So yeah, both of the 2 questions that are shared today are mine, which is why it's good to share your questions. And if you've done some dialectic, share your dialectic on it. If you've mythologized your dialectic, share that too. Make that movie, make that song, make that painting. Or short story, or comic, whatever you're interested in as your skill. Now, speaking of which, Socrates is doing the same thing. He is doing something and he's mythologizing it. And what is the mythology of the Phaedo? The ideal hero. If you were to create a story about the ideal hero, it would be one who has to not only slay the particular problems in where we are now, we have to what's the word? Let's bring up the text. We have to, whoops. In the text we are... Oh, by the way, for your question about the eudaimon, if the text started by saying, oh, Socrates was like an eudaimon in his disposition in logos, then the rest of the text will tell you, what is Socrates' logos? What is his words and his reasoning? Because that's going to be information about your question. What is it? If Socrates isn't being like an eudaimonia, a good daemon, in his logos, then this logos will be clues. And his disposition. So here, where we are here, Phaedo, who's our narrator, said, I've certainly been in awe of Socrates, but never more at the time when he came to our rescue, talking about a hero. Therefore, on the one hand, he had a response to these puzzles that was not at all expected, but what most mystified me indeed about self. So the daemon, if Socrates is representing the good daemon, and his disposition is in logos, his state of mind and his words would be not expected, would respond to puzzles, would mystify people about self. It's not concerned with jelly beans, not concerned with fame, but to get people curious, really, really curious about self. And he had a pleasant and gentle and admirable way. So that's his disposition. So this is what the daemon is functioning like, and this is how pleasant, gentle, admirable. And he received the logos. So there's the good daemon would have a relationship to the logos in a certain way. He would receive the logos. He perceived the effect that the Logos had on us. So to be a good daemon, you'd have to recognize how the Logos affects people, especially if you want to be pleasant and gentle around them and make them puzzled and mystified about the self. How does people's arguments affect them? Because they're in the text, they're confused about the arguments that Simmias and Cebes put forward against the immortality of the soul. Socrates put forward the argument that the soul is immortal, and then they provided a counter. But Socrates, as a good daemon, is able to perceive the effect the Logos had on us, and then consequently how well he healed us. So a good daemon might therefore, these are hypotheses by the way, but add them to your hypothesis sack. Does a good daemon heal others? Does he have a healing art therefore? If he's a healer, would he have an art? Okay. Keenly perceive the effect of the Logos. Does a doctor keenly perceive the effect of certain illnesses and medicine? Does a doctor have an art? And he summoned us from our flight and defeat. Interesting. So a daemon doesn't beat people down and defeat them like a debate, or own them with, like as some philosophers try and do. He summons us from our defeat and our flight. So the daemon doesn't want people to run away from their questions or puzzles. That's interesting. He turned us around. Oh, the Greek word for that is ousia, to turn around and know yourself. That's the ousia is the sixth sense that can know being. If we're talking about separating from our physical senses to know reality, that happens through the sense called ousia. That's a turning around. Therefore, the eudaimon, as part of healing, not only judges the effect Logos has on people in a pleasant and gentle and admirable way, but can turn them around. Wow, there's part of being mystified. Is that part of turning someone around? How do you mystify someone? By the way, puzzles. To be mystified about self, do you first have to have a puzzle? So maybe part of the daemon is to help people gain questions or puzzles so that they can be open to being mystified about self. By the way, do you turn about on your question and reflect on it? Is that a turning around? So he turned us around to follow along with him and together examine the Logos. So as part of being a daemon, abandoning people or going together, sharing your work with others, helping people along. And do you turn around just through, I don't know, just being mystified or with the Logos? So does the daemon have an art of healing? And does he use the Logos to do it? So all these are questions that you can add to your question if you're interested. And this is why we're reading. So, and all of those very relevant to our question. If Socrates is providing the stakes to the story, that he has to vanquish the Logos of Simmias and Cebes. So right after that. So what we're learning about is the ideal hero. The ideal hero should themselves be pleasant and gentle and admirable. Should themselves relate to puzzles, to turn people around with the Logos, together, to be mystified about self. So we could say, yeah, the ideal hero might have something to do with the good daemon. And part of his journey is to vanquish the Logos of Simmias and Cebes. But not only that, he said, by the way, if I convince you, and then later on when I'm not here, someone else convince you of the opposite, that would be a blow. By the way, people who hate humans, that's how they get to that state. They thought humans were trustworthy, especially their nearest and dearest friends, and then they turn out to be base and untrustworthy. After many blows, he hates everyone and believes there is no ideal sanity or ideal state of mind in anyone, and therefore humans are worthless. But actually, if we had a contest of worthlessness, there would be very few winners, because very few are in the extremes, but they're usually between the extremes. So this is what causes villains. So if I'm giving you the logos by being a good daemon in a sense of helping you vanquish the logos of Simius and Cebes, I'm not really being a good daemon, not really being the ideal hero, if I'm not giving you the art to be able to judge for yourself, because I'm just giving you this truth, but someone will contradict it. Then you'll be like, well, I don't know what to believe. I used to believe this, but now I don't. So I can't trust the logos. And therefore, just like you end up not trusting any humans because you did not trust them with the use of the art, and you were led to believe the man is truthful and sound and trustworthy, and then you discover he's not. After many such blows, you hate everyone because you weren't using the art of judging people. So too, if you trust in some logos as being true without the use of the art of logos, and then shortly believe it to be false, sometimes true and other times not so, especially listen to people who spend their whole life contradicting the logos, everyone on the news pretty much, everyone on YouTube and stuff, they're all hating on others, they're all contradicting the others. They're not, very few are actually exploring together like a daemon the logos to turn ourselves around to be mystified about the self. Most people just contradict things. So you have these people in your world. You'll believe the logos that I give you, and then you won't. And then they'll tell you that there is no reality, there is no understanding, there is no paradigm in reality. There's just many opinions. There is no certain logos that is true and firm and capable of being understood. That sounds very convincing by these people, because they just if they spend their time just contradicting the logos, yeah, they're kind of proving it. There is no actual logos that are true, because look, I can just contradict you at all times. And if I'm not contradicting you, I can shout over you. There we go, I'm shouting over you. Therefore, it's a kind of contradiction, right? I'm proving that all humans suck. There's no sane state of mind, and there is no sane logos. If that happens, and you think that it's because of the logos, not because of your own lack of art, that you are suffering these back and forths, then you will spend the rest of your life hating and reviling the logos. And Socrates says, this is there's no greater defect that one can suffer other than to hate the logos. Why? If you do so, you will be deprived of the truth of beings and of knowledge. Socrates is saying this is the greatest defect. So if he's going to be a good daemon and the ideal hero for our story, then he has to prevent this greatest injustice, this greatest badness, to be deprived of the truth of beings and knowledge. The greatest defect that we can have, to hate the logos. So that's what he has to do in the story. And he said, by the way, it's a lack of the art of the logos. So he's not just going to give a good argument that the soul is immortal. He has to, therefore, define and demonstrate. Those are the first two categories of the dialectic. He has to define the art of the logos, because that's what we need, not just to solve this particular fear of the soul not being immortal and this being our last life, but all problems, because all arguments can be contradicted by people, and you can't have Socrates around forever to walk you through the dialectic. You have to learn the art of the logos. And if you don't, you'll go back and forth and you'll suffer many blows and you end up hating the logos, just like people hate people. When you get let down by people over and over again, you end up hating people and becoming a villain. So too with the logos. So if Socrates is going to be a good daemon and the ideal hero, he has to define the art of the logos for us, because he said that's what actually is the cause. And he has to demonstrate it. He has to walk the walk and talk the talk. But he said, look, if we don't use the art of the logos, so he's not going to be around forever. He has to provide something so we can learn it. He has to not only define the art of the Logos, not only demonstrate it or live it, but he has to divide it up into its key terms and structure so that we can have the material to ourselves learn it. Just as we approach the 2 questions from the chat today. What is the good daemon? And how does eternity relate to timelines? The same way we had to find key terms and divide it up into this structure so that we can develop our own understanding, and that being a kind of meditation that can allow us to experience eternity, go from understanding to nous or knowledge, so too do we need to do this for the art of the Logos, so that we have what we need so that we don't end up hating people and hating the Logos. And we can reach the whole thing that we're after, the truth of knowledge and beings. The truth of knowledge and beings. The very thing he just said is for the sake of which we are a lover of learning. Up here, just a few pages up. That for the sake of which... Yes. To be communion with the divine company and of the pure and uniform. For the sake of these beings, ones who love learning are orderly and courageous. So that's the 2 virtues, 2 of the 4 virtues, sound-mindedness, or well ordered within yourself, and courageous in your pursuit. The soul of the courageous, virile is the adjective for courageous. The soul of the virile or courageous philosopher must follow the Logos in this way, for the sake of these beings. So we just came to that conclusion before, and then there was this objection, and now he has to not only address the objection, but give us what we need so that we don't end up hating the Logos after he's gone. He has to pass on his tradition to us. Give us the art of the Logos, which means he has to... This is, by the way, self to self, definition. Self to others, demonstration. Others to others, division. Others back to self, synthesis and analysis. These are the 4 categories of the dialectic. He has to do them. So, to be an ideal hero or a daemon have to function through the structure of the Logos, the dialectic. He has to define the art of the Logos, he has to demonstrate it. He has to show us that he is the ideal hero. But he has to give us what we need for us to learn it, because he just said, the worst problem's going to happen if I just tell it to you and you don't learn it yourself. If you don't learn to judge whether or not these arguments are accurate through the art of the Logos. Then someone's going to contradict me when I'm gone, and then you're going to end up hating the Logos and you won't reach the truth of knowledge and being. That's the worst problem that a human being can have. So he has to divide it up into the key terms and structure that we can apply, just as we applied to these questions today, so that we can synthesize our understanding together and analyze it, which means to refer it back to the start, to understand the Logos, so we can learn it ourselves. He has to be the greatest hero in not just doing it and defining it, but to give us what we need for us to pick it up and learn it. Otherwise, he's not being a good daemon. Otherwise, he's not being the ideal hero. Pass on your quirk, pass on your tradition so that the next person can improve it. What is that? Synthesis analysis is a way of understanding it where you can see it in a new way. That's the improvement. You start with definition and then division and then synthesis and analysis. You go back to the self, you go back to the beginning, and you see what you defined in a new way. So that the questions we had in the daemon. So all of these, thanks for joining me. This is the end of the stream, by the way. So all of these terms that we've been talking about to the daemon, if you do the dialectic in this way, you will see your question in a new way. You will improve your understanding of the daemon. So those are the stakes. This is the promise. Socrates has to do this for us, and we have to meet him where he's at for us to be able to accurately judge. Socrates is really outlining the stakes for him, but for us to be able to judge whether or not he's successful, he's outlining the stakes for us. Big stakes, ultimate stakes, the ideal stakes. And we have to match him. Let's see if we can. On that cliffhanger and on that bombshell, I hope to see you next time. Thank you for joining me. I hope to see you next. Of course, I just said that. If you want to support the channel, you can join us on Twitch. You can like and subscribe on YouTube. You can join the Discord to share your work. And you can support on Patreon. Hopefully there'll be a Patreon up soon. If not, there'll be a link below. Thank you very much, and I hope to see you next time. I hope there's something that you have been mystified in an unexpected way about the self. On with something that has triggered that kind of turning around. On that note, thank you so much for joining me. I hope to see you next time.